I'm guessing if we had a Defending the Kingdom straw poll for NFL Executive of the Year every year, maybe we're biased, he would be the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, Brent Veach. We don't know why you haven't got it before, but anyway, that being said, we're here at the NFL Combine, and just want to ask you the value of this experience, maybe how it's changed, but when you go to the Combine, you're going, here's what I want to get out of this. What is that?
Yeah, I think what we really strive to get is just that in-depth knowledge of the person. I mean, you hear so much about the player, and our college scouts do a great job of kind of painting the picture, but having all those pieces kind of fall into place. And the time that we get with these players in the formal and even the informal interviews is extremely valuable to us. You can learn a lot, and it really kind of reinforces some of the things that we had been told all season. But there's also times where things don't quite work out that way, and it allows us to do an even deeper dive on a prospect. So it's the first start of the process, but it's a very valuable one.
You and your guys always attack this time of year, and the track record in the draft kind of shows that. But is there even more excitement this time, considering we're picking at 9? This team hasn't picked in the top 10 in a very long time, and you have a chance to get a really good player early on?
Yeah, I think certainly there is. I mean, obviously you don't ever want to be picking that high, but I think we're in that situation, so we have to make the most of it. And, we'll have difficult decisions as we go, but, I'm not just focused on the first round. I think the value of having a top 10 pick in every round, I can't tell you how many times that, we finish day one and, we come back on day two and there's 6 or 7 guys that, in your mind they're never getting to 32, but you're going to be right back up the next day. It's funny because our second round pick would be kind of the talent level that we've been picking for the first round in the last 10 years. So I think coming into this draft, knowing that we should get at least 2 of those guys and then just keep adding as the draft goes on. So it's a super exciting opportunity for us, and we just have to be as prepared as possible and capitalize and make the most of it.
Brett, I want to jump back. You talked about the interviews, formal and informal, but the landscape in which we live now, the NIL landscape, the COVID eligibility landscape, we got 26-year-old dudes here, and we got 20-year-old dudes here. How does that dynamic impact in what you're trying to find out intel-wise? And guys that have been at 4 schools in 4 years.
Yeah. It certainly, I was saying at the podium today, I think that when we officially received notification of underclassmen that were returning to school, I think we had over 20. I think the number was close to 25 players that we took out from our top 100. So that's a lot of players, and it certainly impacts the depth of the draft, and in many ways, the opportunity to get guys that are still in that young developmental stage and get them and kind of see it through. A lot of these guys that you're drafting are kind of reach maybe their athletic ceiling. They're 24, as you mentioned, Mitch, 24, 25 years old. So it's another hurdle that we have to overcome. But it reemphasizes the importance of kind of tightening that board up and finding the top 100 guys right out of the gate, and then building your layers on day 3 and trying to find those guys that are talented, that are driven, but do still have some developmental upside.
So the athletic testing gets a lot of the attention around here, but like Mitch mentioned, the interview process is super important, whether it be the formal ones or the informal ones. What do you guys as a staff get out of the interviews here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of how they're, you're going to get into a little dive of where they're from and their family, their support system, which is super important, but really how these guys are wired, not just how well they love football, but what football means to them. And I think that's important because, as these guys have a chance to get paid really well now in college. And a lot of these guys are coming in here making time. I mean, these quarterbacks are making $8-9 million now. So it's kind of a trickle-down effect. So, most of the NIL is difficult for us to navigate because it keeps good young players in college 1 year longer, and there's less younger players with developmental upside. The one positive I think you can say is that you get a picture of how these guys are handling money and handling a certain level of fame. And so, you do take what you can, and I think that there's an element of how these guys have handled that. I mean, a lot of these guys. I mean, some of these guys have stayed in school, and some of these guys have done good with their money and know how to handle it. And so, in some aspects, they're a little bit more prepared for what they have in front of them. But I think just in general, I don't think the drafts, until there's a huge change or a shift in the way college runs, I think the drafts will always be leaner in regards to draftable prospects, and just means you have to do a little extra work and get that board dialed in just right, especially on day three. And day three, as you know, Mitch, that's our favorite day.
I was going to say that just leads right into my next question, because people zero in on 9, but you're sitting at 40. You got 3 of the top 75 picks. But how does this several days at the combine impact, because you've crushed day 2 and day 3, and considering the landscape change, do you look at it differently? And how do you is it harder to get to crush day 3 than it's been before?
It makes it more difficult just from the volume of players, and a lot of those young guys that would fill up your day 3 guys are staying in school. But the way I look at day 3 in the draft is unique. I think like in the first round, and really the first 75 players, I think across the league, most teams have almost the same 75 players. There's a little degree in differences, I'm sure, across the board. But, I mean, in general, if you have a top 75, I mean, most of those guys are kind of the same names, and it's just a matter of strategically, placing value and fit and need and all that kind of stuff, positional value. But I think once you get to day 3, once you get, like, past pick 100, like, where teams value guys in 4, 5, 6, and 7 is extremely different. I mean, I think you'll have a lot of teams that value guys in rounds 4 or 5, and half the league see them that way, and half the league think they're free agents. And half of the guys that some of these teams see as 6th, 7th round value, the league sees as 4 or 5 round value. So I think there's just a huge, varying degree of where these prospects lie, and that's why I think the first couple of rounds are always difficult, because everyone's kind of jockeying for position for the same guy, potentially at the same positions, and it just cycles through for the first 2 rounds into 3. But once you hit round 4, then it's then it really comes down to how much tape you watched and how good your evaluations are, and the vision and the scheme and the fit, and that's where I think the extra work that our college guys do, and we spend again just as much as time as on rounds 5, 6, and 7 as we do on 1 and 2, and I think it pays off more, because I think leagues don't see guys in the same value conceptually. So that's where you got to be on your mark, and that's where you get the really good values.
Then you find Cooper McDonald, who just drives in.
Yeah.
With all that in mind, tough question to answer here. I don't want you to give too much away, but if you're looking at the draft from like a 1,000-foot view, what are some of the strengths of this draft in terms of depth?
I think it's the defensive line. I think is pretty solid through the first 3 rounds. I think you're going to have a lot of DNs off the board early. So the D line, in particular, the defensive end position, I think that there's really good depth at the wideout position and some solid depth at the corner position. It's probably leaner at the running back position, but I mean, we'll see what happens. Some years where you thought that there was a lot of running back depth, you didn't get one, and maybe the year there was no depth, maybe we'll find a way to get one. Yeah, that's how it works out. But it's no different than every year. It always rotates. But I think just before we get through the combine and the testing, I just think right out of the gate, defensive end is really deep, and I think that there's some solid depth at the receiver position.
Final question. We appreciate your time. Is the medicals. And I'm going to go back to the NIL. The fact that when you were coming out, I could call Delaware, I could get your medical in Delaware. You were there 4 years, 5 years. Now, how much more of a challenge is it to get a strong, accurate medical on each one of these players, especially the ones like the corner from Tennessee who did not play in 25?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's other than the formal interviews, you can put the medical right up there as the most important aspect of this. So our trainers come, and our whole staff comes in here, and these guys go through the whole gamut now. I mean, they go through all the testings and the MRIs and imaging. So that's the one thing that we leave here feeling good about, a foundation of where these guys are medically. I think that secondary challenges are the guys that we like that didn't get invited to the combine. Those are typically the guys that we're going to have to bring in for a 30. Not tipping our hand. On one end, obviously, we like them, but on the other end, there's a good chance that they didn't go to the combine. If they didn't go to the combine, then we're we're just looking at medical notes and not getting that hard-driven data. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but I think, through the combine and through these 30-day visits, and then you do get into a situation where if, there's a lot of guys that you don't have medicals on, sometimes you will work with other teams and exchange, not grade notes or what you value notes, but you'll exchange medical notes for guys that, say we brought in, of our 30 guys that we brought in for an unofficial visit, we had 30 medical. If 10 of those guys were combine guys, we didn't need the medical, but the other 20, maybe 15, 20 will get medical, and then, you only get 30. So it wouldn't be out of the question for me to call like Berganzi and say, hey, I'll give you 5 of my 30 that didn't go to the combine for 5 of you, just to get the medical. So that's a huge part of it. And so the combine is huge because most all the top prospects are here. So we'll get that medical data that we feel good about moving forward.
Okay, it's time to get out your In Veach We Trust T-shirts, get them washed up and ready. It's this time of year.